Okay, welcome to our lesson on variables here. I've called this program variables.t, and what does this program do? Well, it declares a variable of each type, assigns values to them, and then it outputs the value. So what is a variable first off? Well, a variable is just a reserved location in the computer's memory that is used to store data. You have to declare a variable before it is used, which means you have to tell the computer, hey, reserve this spot in the memory for me to put some piece of data into it. And the type, variables come in different types, and the type of data that you want to store in that variable is going to determine the type of variable that you have. So there are three main types of variable that we have to worry about in Turing for right now, and these are integer, real, and string variables. We use integers for integer numbers. Okay, so we could do something like var count :int. Okay, this declares an integer variable. We use the keyword var to let the computer know that, to let Turing know that what comes after this is a variable declaration. Then we type the name of the variable, in this case count, and then we put the type of it after this colon here. So this is an integer variable type. If we want to store something that contains a decimal number, we use what is called a real variable. So we would declare this by saying var something like number : real. Okay, so these are for decimal numbers or any kind of real number here. And we can also use string to store text or literals like we've had before. So we might have something like var and first name : string. We declare a string type variable. Now, a little bit of a convention on naming your strings. Or naming your variables. You want to give your variables a name that describes what is in them. So number is kind of a bad name to give a variable because you don't know what that number represents. So if you want this number to represent the age of something, you would probably change this so that this was age. Or if you want that number represented a distance, you would call this thing distance here. Okay, because it doesn't really represent anything in this program, we're just going to call it number though. If you want to have sort of two words in your variable name, like first name, because you want to also have a variable called second name, usually what you do is you start the variable name off with a lowercase letter, and where you would start the second word, you just put a capital letter in there. Okay. Now, we can declare more than one variable on one line. So here I've declared var first name. If I wanted to declare var second name, I can just put a comma in between them and declare those things on the same line. Now, if I want to assign values to each of these variables, or actually store the data inside them, this is how I do it. If I want to set count equal to 4, I type the variable name, I do :equals, and then the number that I want. So what this statement does here is it takes what is on the right hand side, 4, and it stores it in what is on the left hand side, the variable count. I can do the same thing for strings, but if I'm going to put a string into a variable, it's got to appear inside quotes so it knows that it's a literal or a string. So if I wanted to say that my variable first name here, I want to store the name Vincent in there. Okay, I have to close my strings, and there it is. I've got a nice string in quotes there, and I can make my second name, I don't know, we'll make this Jules here. Okay, so I've taken that, takes a string Jules, stores it in the variable called second name. I can also put values into these variables right when I declare them. So up here where I declared number, var number : real, at the end of this I could do :equals 46.5, something like that. Okay, so I can put that right up there at the beginning. Now, what if we want to output the contents of these variables? Let's do something like this. We'll just say, well, before we do that, let's run this and make sure everything works. Notice that my output window hasn't popped up yet. That's because I don't have any output. So now let's actually do some output here. So we're going to do outputting variables. Okay, and coming up next. So if we want to output what is in the variable count, we just do put, then the variable name. So this will, the computer will, now look inside that variable count, see what's in there, and output the result on the screen. So if we run this, it outputs just the value 4. If we want to, say, use it in a little bit of formatting, I can say that the value of number is, and then I want to output the value, what I have in variable. I have to close my string here, so it'll output this string, then do a comma, and then do the variable name. So this will output first the string, the value of number is, and then at the end of the string, it'll output the value that is stored in number there. Same thing for a variable, string variable. If I just put output first name, and I run this again, it'll output whatever is in first name. Okay. Now, a little aside here. What does the plus sign do? Okay. So let's see what happens here. Output. Notice the slash ends in here are kind of like the slash t's that we looked before, except the slash ends give us a new line. And if I want to get those quotation marks inside a string, I have to use what's called an escape character. So I do slash double quote slash double quote to get that quotation mark inside there. Essentially, that character essentially means ignore what comes right after this. So what I've put here as comments are slash n adds a new line, slash quotation mark lets you put a quote inside a string. Okay, what does plus do? Well, one thing it does is it does addition of numbers. If I do put count plus number, what the computer is going to do is it's going to look inside the variable count, get what's stored there, look inside number, get the number that is stored in there, add the two of them together, and output the result. The result there is 49.6. What if I use that plus between two string variables? First name and second name. What it does then is what's called concatenation of strings. What it's going to do is it's going to look inside first name, take out the string from there, look inside second name, take the string out from there, and put those two strings together to make one big string, long string, and then output that string up on the screen. So if I hit F1, it took Vincent from first name, Jules from second name, squashed them together, and then output the result. And if we want to do something, we can also say, let's just declare a new variable here, var both names, string. Alright. I can declare variables wherever I want in the program, as long as I declare them before I want to use them. So I've declared a new string here, both names. Let's set both names equal to the concatenation of those two strings. Okay. And then I can output both names, and let's see what I get here. It outputs Vincent Jules again. Okay, so it's this line right here takes first name, adds second name to it, so it squashes those two strings together, puts the result into both names, and then we can output it. And we can add more stuff on here. We could add, I don't know, we could add a string like this, Butch, okay, and then that would add those three strings together and output the result. Okay. Last thing we need to talk about are constants. Constants are like variables, but their value cannot be changed. So in this up here, I took count and I assigned the number 4 to it. I could, if I wanted to, change what number is in count. I can say count. All of a sudden, I want count to be 5. Hit F2 to format that nicely, and the computer doesn't care. If I do put count after that and run it, it's happy enough to change what is in count to 5. So basically what that line did there is it took the number 5, stored it in count, overwrote the 4 that was in there before. If you don't want your variable to be able to be changed, you can make it a what's called a constant. Okay? So the way you declare constant is instead of typing var, you type const, C-O-N-S-T, and we usually have constants in all capital letters to denote that they're constants. But let's say I want to declare a constant like pi, 3.14159. I don't want anybody to accidentally change the value of pi in my program, so it's appropriate to use a constant for it. You don't have to specify a type when declaring. Turing knows by what kind of value you decide to put into it what type to use here. But you have to assign a value to it when you are declaring it. Okay? So do not specify type when declaring, but must give it a value. Okay? So constant pi equals that, and I could do something like this, constant third name here, and I can have a constant, a string constant here, which is going to be Mia. Okay? So now we can run this, and it's happy enough to create those constants. What if we try changing the value of pi? Let's say we decided that we wanted pi to be equal to 4 to make things a lot easier. Now when I run my program, it tells me that there's an error. Okay? And the information it gives down here at the bottom, left side of assignment is not a variable and hence cannot be assigned to. Because what's on the left-hand side here is a constant, I can't put a new value inside of it. So that's variables.